so I don't interrupt anyone with the recording in progress announcement. I will just take 30 seconds to welcome everyone to another one of our Airway reporting support calls, this time with our friends and partners from FirstWatch to help us to gain better insights into our airway management performance through the data analytics that the FirstWatch team and products can provide. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to the experts on this topic and let Mike and Sylvia help us with our improvement efforts.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you so much, Sheree, and for NEMSCO for inviting us here.
No, don't.
No.
Well, just leave it
Someone
blank.
told me don't, but yeah.
Don't.
Anthony, Scott, you got your, there you go. Please feel free to open up your chat. Any questions, comments, quips, quotes, I will monitor the chat here. Anything you've got, toss it in. This is designed to be helpful and interactive. We've got Sylvia and Crystal. Crystal, you want to say hi and just introduce yourself real quick from the FirstWatch team?
Yes, hello, my name is Crystal Spalding. I am the clinical support specialist on Sylvia's team, and it is great seeing all of you folks today.
Sounds good. Thank you. And Sylvia is our medical director, leads our clinical team, been a paramedic and kind of a data wizard or whisperer for quite a long time. So I will let Sylvia take it over, and I will jump in with any questions that pop up in the chat at any point in time.
Thank you. So now you made me feel like I'm Gandalf now. You know, I want my robe now. So thank you everybody for inviting us. I was looking through the list of participants. I was like, oh, look at this, all my friends there. So there are obviously, a bunch of names that we have been working for and with over the years. So appreciate y'all joining. So I have about 20 to 25 minutes of kind of content. What I want to do is do something first. I know, hi, Stephanie. So something that I do not like to do, which is show kind of live, live triggers, live first pass. I usually do recordings or snapshots or pictures or something because, sometimes the internet, gods are not very kind to me, but I'm going to do it live. So hopefully, I got everything loaded and everything goes well. Like Mike said, feel free to interrupt at any time. Our idea or intent for today is kind of show you what we have done in terms of NEMSCO for the 3 airway measures, using obviously the tools that we have available in FirstWatch. Any of the things that I'm going to show to you today are available for any of our partnering agencies. So if you like one of the triggers that I'm going to show you, just reach out to either our support email or, to any of your point of contacts within the FirstWatch team, and we'll be able to pass those triggers over onto your data using your data. And then also, if you have FirstPass, I have a NEMSCO protocol built in that I have really taken my time on and I have really vetted on. And then I made just a quick airway protocol just for the purposes of this demo, right? So like you said, anything that I have and I'm going to show you, we can pass it on to your agency. So obviously I'm using only EPCR data here at this time. So with that little intro, I am going to share my first screen. And then Mike, do me a favor because I'm really paranoid. Can you just nod if you can see a trigger page?
We don't have anything shared yet.
Got it. How about if I click the actual share button?
There you go. Your trigger page is up. It looks good.
Thank you, my friend. See, this is why I'm paranoid about it. I just needed one more click. Okay, so I am going to start, and I'm showing trigger, right? Demo airway?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm going to start by running through the airway measures, again, 1, 5, and 18 with in trigger format, right? And I'll kind of explain what I did on the trigger format, and then after that, I will pass on into first pass, right? So both of them have their pros and their cons. Both of them have the ability to kind of sustain the measures, but obviously you get a little bit more from one and the other and vice versa. So let's.
And so not everybody on here will understand what a trigger or first pass is.
Oh,
They
my
might think-
apologies. You're right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so from FirstWatch, from the clinical side of the house, they are two big tools that we use on an everyday basis to provide data to our partnering agencies. One of them we call the trigger. That is just FirstWatch vernacular that describes a set of query inclusion-exclusion criteria that we built to grab a specific set of calls. Once we have this trigger built in, the criteria can be super, super simple, right? It can be, give me all of the calls that have a provider impression of stroke, right? Or it can be really intricate and said, okay, like, an opioid overdose trigger that I absolutely love, which is find me all of the calls that have a primary and secondary impression of something related to opioid overdose, or look at the EMD ProQA card and let me know, or grab the call if it's a card 23, or look at the medications where Narcan is administered twice, or, search for the narrative and look for, all these different phrases, keywords, misspellings, abbreviations that have to do anything related to opioid overdose, right? So the system can sustain really, really easy inclusion criteria and really complicated, right? What that query is you determine it, right? So our partnering agency determines the query in terms of what they're looking for, right? So they want to say, okay, Sylvia, give me all of the possible opioid overdose calls that you can find, right? So I'll tell them, okay, I can look on these 5 different places. Is that okay with you? So that's a kind of back and forth process that we have with our partnering agencies. Once we have a trigger, I can have different columns, right, that I'm going to show right now. I can plot the calls in a map. I can do heat maps. I can extract the data in Excel format, et cetera, et cetera. So that is a trigger. It's the foundational kind of Lego piece of the FirstWatch system. And then a first pass protocol. First pass is one of our specialized modules. It has to do with clinical quality assurance, compliance, review, etc. So what we do with first pass is we start from a set of categories of groups of calls, right? It can be anything that you want: stroke, trauma, chest pain, refusals, airway, whatever you would like. And then to those calls that we identify, we automate a set of questions, right, related to patient care documentation, right? So if I am looking at a stroke call, what are the things, what are the metrics, questions, documentation, patient care that you are requiring your crews to do and to document when they have a possible stroke patient, right? So it can be things like stroke scale documented, patient transported to an appropriate stroke destination, right? And this is a suspected LVO, then, scene time less than, 5, 10, 15 minutes. So all of those different metrics or questions that you're currently looking at. When you do review of a call, we automate them for you, right? So those are the two big difference. And then, I'm sorry, this is super, super quick kind of difference about what each thing is. Again, happy to spend some additional time on the side to explain more or to show each of those modules, right? So thank you, Mike, for reminding me. Okay, so what I'm going to start with is with the FirstWatch trigger, right? So we talked about FirstWatch trigger, just vernacular that talks about a specific set of query, that it's automated, and it's always looking for those types of calls. You can have columns, you can map, you can do heat maps, you can do alerts on, and you can export the data. So what you're looking at right now is Airway measure number 1. So what I did here is the query, the behind the scenes case definition that allows me to grab each one of these calls, right? So each row is one call. What I did is I used the NEMSQA denominator and build it behind the scenes, right? So each one of these calls represents one call that met the denominator. And then I'm grabbing data starting from October to current. And this is a real, real installation, real data that we're obviously masking here for the purposes of this demo. So I know that from October to current, if I scroll down, I have 15 calls, right? This particular agency has 15 calls that met the denominator for Airway number 1. And then from these 15 calls, we found none of them, we have 0 calls of the 15 that are within the standard, right? So the numerator from the NEMSQA, right now we have 0 calls that met the criteria, and we have outside of standard 15. And then compliance obviously is 0, right? And then let me run through the different columns kind of to show you why. So like I said, each one of these rows is one call that met the criteria for the denominator. Each one of these is a column that is displaying a particular data point for that call, right? So we have basic information like the incident, the EMD code, problem, primary, secondary impression. We got the priority of the call. We have the unit, the disposition, destination, it's block here, de-identified, so you don't know where this agency is coming from. And then we go into specific columns or specific data points that are related to the Airway measure, right? And these are all metrics or columns that I built. We don't necessarily need to keep them as is. I can obviously add more columns over here, change, delete, or anything, right? So these are just my idea of what I think was useful for the purposes of this demo, right? So for the Airway measure, we know that we have some conditions that are attached to age, right? So I have a column over here with the age units. One of the exclusion criteria for the Airway measures is a cardiac arrest call that occurred prior to EMS arrival, right? So that is part of the denominator. I'm excluding those calls. And I added this column for cardiac arrest for you to see, right? So it has to be either documented as no, this is not a cardiac arrest, or yes, it's a cardiac arrest, but the cardiac arrest happened after EMS arrival, right? And then I have a breakdown. Airway 1 measure, as you know, is looking for hypoxia and hypotension 0 to 3 minutes before the Airway documentation and 0 to 5 minutes after the Airway documentation, right? So I created these 2 columns that are going to display a yes, right? If it's finding hypoxia or hypotension before. And then same thing, yes, hypoxia or hypotension if it happens after, right? And then we do have over here this particular call did not have hypoxia or hypotension 0 to 3 minutes before, but it did have after, right? So right now from these 15 calls, none of them met the criteria for no hypotension, no hypoxia in the time of 0 to 3 minutes before the Airway was documented, as well as 0 to 5 minutes after the Airway, right? And then right here, it looks very easy in terms of a column, but the logic behind the scenes is quite intricate. So I had to have a couple of engineers help me build this in. The metric as built, the SpO2 value is always 90, but we did account, and this is why I have the age over here, right? We did account for hypotension. The NEMSQA metric has some different calculations based on age, right? SpO2 is the same, greater than 90 for everybody, greater or equal than 90 for everybody, but the hypotension does have some criteria attached to age grouping, right? So that's included in the logic behind the scenes, right? And then just for easy access, right? I have some additional columns that say, okay, show me all of the Airway procedures were successful in the first attempt, because that's part of the criteria for the NEMSQA Airway, right? So you're going to get the name of the Airway that was used, where it was successful on first attempt, right? So this is the Airway that I'm using to look for the hypoxia or hypotension 0 to 5 minutes after or before. And then I am plotting the time of this first airway, right? So you have this time right here. And then again, just for the reason to give you perspective, I documented or plotted the time of the first SpO2, which is greater than or equal to the 90, the time of the last SpO2 greater to or equal to the 90. And then I did the same thing with systolic blood pressure, right? So it's just to give you parameters. If you see blank over here, that means that there was no time, that there was no SpO2 in this case that was greater than, documented that was greater than or equal to the 90, right? If you see a number, that it means that it met the criteria. And that's the information that was plotting over there, right? And then I'll take a little bit of pause, and then I saw just some like chats going in and out, but I haven't been looking at them. So do you guys have any questions for me, or Mike, anything that I need to address in the chat?
So the only question, Shri gave us a nice compliment. She loves this. Jennifer said, can we get this list NEMC fields the trigger is pulling the data from?
Absolutely. Yep. So I can absolutely give you the list, or I can also add it as a in the column, right? So the e-vitals, you know, I can't remember 12 or 16, right? So I can plot the NEMSIS data name, I guess, in the column as well.
That sounds great. What other questions do folks have here?
So,
Hey, so-
Mike and Sylvia, I just have one question.
Sure.
Yes, Steve?
We ran this data ourselves on our data, not through FirstWatch, but this is awesome. But my question is, the most common thing that we found was that the pulse ox and or the blood pressure didn't exist in the 3 minutes before or 5 minutes after.
Yeah.
How does FirstWatch handle that, where there is no value? Is that still a failure, or, you know, a non-compliant?
Yes. So I read a lot through the PDF from the Nemscometric, right? And what I got is it needs to exist, right? So we try to build it as closely as possible. You're completely right. We did find a lot of cases where there was just not any documentation of any at all, any SpO2 or any SVP. So according to, again, the document, it has to be present, right? So it's still considered non-compliant.
Agreed. So is that what shows up as yes, hypoxia or hypotension, or does
Yeah.
that show up in a different way?
It's included in the same logic, right?
Okay.
So,
Very good.
Hey Sylvia, I have two questions. This is
Hi.
Stephanie. It's good to see you.
You too.
Can you scroll back over to the right?
Absolutely.
So you may have said this and I missed a piece of it.
Yeah,
The
fine.
time of first SpO2 equal to 90, is it equal to and greater than, or is it an equal to?
It's greater than or equal to the
Okay.
9.
I just
Yeah.
can't see, I don't know, my old eyes can't see.
No, you're right. I think it is a equal to in this column, but it's
Okay.
greater than or equal.
Okay, same for the blood pressure. Okay.
Yes.
And then the other question I had was related to what Steve just said,
Mhm.
and it was about flagging it based in the logic, flagging the type of failure that it is. Can we flag it as a failure, a null value failure versus an actual value failure? You know
We
what I mean?
can for sure. Yeah, we can separate them out.
Because I
right?
think that would help guide some of the improvement projects. Like
Mhm.
if we know that most of the failures are and we do kind of know that most of the failures are null values versus actual hypoxia, that's a different kind of intervention versus
Versus actually being a hypoxia or hypertension.
right.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, we can absolutely, I can parse it out, right? So again, it will still be considered being a call being non-compliant.
For sure,
but
yeah.
we can absolutely parse it out to say, no value, right?
Yeah,
So
that would be awesome.
yeah, absolutely. So that could be like a third response, right? So you either have a yes, hypoxia, hypertension, no, right? If it was, met, or a third would be, I don't know, no,
all
right?
information everybody wants. Like we can
Or
ask
not-
full
non-documented.
questions, or we can just get an abbreviated scenario.
Yes, I agree with what you're saying. Kevin, can you mute?
I don't need to test anything. It's really what the unit.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, I'm adding it to my notes, and then that's something that we can adjust, right? Super easy to create a third response for these columns, right? And then just to confirm, right, while I have you all here, again, a null value is considered still non-compliant, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Like I've been really, I printed them out and I really studied the NEMSCO, you know, metrics, and I was like, no, it's still like in my brain, I was like, no, it's still not compliant, but wanted to make sure. Okay. Thank you for that. Alrighty, so this is for airway number 1, and then obviously you can export, right? So these columns, right, I made for you, but you can export this information and it will give you an Excel format, all of the different information or columns that are included in the trigger. So if there is something else that you would like to see, we can add it as an additional column, right? It can say anything that you would like, right, in terms of the description. And then this can be something that you can, you know, export and then either you send over to NEMSCO. I'm not sure how the methodology is to send the information over to NEMSCO. But this is, you know, just the raw data behind the trigger. Right? You can do that with all of your triggers. Alrighty, I'm sorry, I don't want to cry. I am cold, my voice is shaky. Alrighty, so my next trigger over here, I'm moving on to airway number 5. So the concept is the same. I use the denominator from NEMSCO, build it in as the query, case definition, inclusion criteria for our trigger. And then each one of these calls represents one call that met the criteria for the denominator for airway number 5. Again, I am using data from October to current from the same agency that I showed before for airway number 1. Right, and then the columns I left exactly the same, right? We can add more, delete more if you don't like it. And then I'm going to scroll down. Okay, here we go. So I got the same H parameter over here. For airway number 5, we have the same exclusion criteria for the yes, cardiac arrest, but prior to EMS arrival. So I plotted that over here. And then I have a column, again, that's measuring airway number 5, which is SpO2 greater than or equal to 94, 0 to 3 minutes prior to the airway, right? And I'm using the same concept of no over here. This is a no and a yes, right? And then, oh, my apologies. I forgot to tell you the compliance, right? So this is a compliance trigger. I'm sorry if I'm making you dizzy over here. So for this agency, we have 17 responses that met the denominator for this airway number 5, starting from October the 1st to current. We got one of them within standard. Outside standard are 16. And then we have a compliance of 5.88%, right? Okay, moving back to my columns. Here we go. So again, this column, like for airway number 1, looks very, very simple, but actually all of the heavy loading is made through a SQL script that's allowing me to measure this yes or no. And then I did the same thing. I plotted the airway procedures that met the criteria. Here you can have more than one, so you will see these comma separated airway procedures that were met. We have the times for those airway procedures, and then again, just easy access for you to see the time of first SpO2. Again, all of these values are greater than or equal to the 94. I check really quickly, and my column does say greater than or equal to 94. I don't know the translation, probably the code. I use the code, you know, the symbol. I think it's not translated over here when we do it on the columns. So, again, easy visualization here for some of the documentation for the time, so you can take a quick little peek. And then, for example, this yes, right? So you have the time for the airway procedure.
Right. They should have an easy time.
And then,
Les, can you mute? Thank you.
oh, sorry. Sorry. And then, the time for the first SpO2 greater than 94 over here is at 26:19, right? So it was met barely from the 0 to 3 minutes prior to airway. That's why it got a pass, and all the rest we got a no. Right? All right. Yeah. So any questions you guys have for me? And
we have one. She says it's not a question, but she doesn't see a respiratory O2 in your tabs. She said Armando built one for her.
Oh, got it. Well, then we will scream at Armando.
right?
Yeah, let's do that. Okay, I'll check in. Make sure you have that access. Thank you.
Great.
And then, yeah, same thing. You can export to Excel, same process, right? And then if everybody is good, I will move to Airway 18. So this is waveform capnography confirmation of invasive airway. And then I'll let you know what I found here. And then I would love to get your input. So same concept, same agency, same, you know, time frame. If I move over here to the bottom, I have 51 total responses that met the denominator for Airway 18. I got 1 within standard, 50 outside of standard, then the compliance, right? And then columns are exactly the same as the ones that I've been showing you. So, you know, the primary, secondary, priority, unit, dispo, destination, the age. And then I have the same airway confirmation over here as a yes or a no. I have the airway procedures, comma separated if they're more than one that met the criteria. The airway procedure times, again, if they're multiple, you're going to see the times, comma separated. And you got the time of last end tidal CO2 greater than or equal to 5. Oh, I did look, I'd separate them and this is showing up. It doesn't like the symbol. And then I have plotted the time of airway confirmation in airway confirmation method. So unless I am understanding the metric incorrectly, in order to be compliant, you need a couple of things. You need the time of last end tidal CO2 needs to be greater than or equal to 5. But you also need to have a documented time of airway confirmation, and the confirmation method needs to be waveform and tidal CO2, right? So those are the 3 conditions that I found in the numerator. When I was checking the data for this particular agency, almost all of the time, they met the criteria for end tidal, the last end tidal CO2 greater than or equal to 5. But for example, this agency, they don't document the time of airway confirmation, right? Or the confirmation method is documented inconsistently. So even though the big sort of clinical component to it, which is, do you have an end tidal greater than or equal to 5, is there, the majority of these calls were non-compliant because they're missing the time of airway confirmation and they're missing the confirmation method, right? So that was really interesting to me, right? Because it seems like, go ahead.
Do you think that's a documentation idiosyncrasy? Because like
Yeah.
when I think of the way ours works, the confirmation is nested within the intervention itself and the methodology as well.
Yeah.
And so I would speculate, and I could be totally wrong, but that if they have an end title, it's probably waveform. Almost nobody has the actual just the capnometers anymore. We had them, you know, 19 years ago or so, but
yep,
I'm
completely
also
agree with you.
wondering,
Go ahead.
I'm also wondering, because we've seen this not with any of these measures, but with other measures, that maybe that's a field that's not being exported to you.
And I do have that one, right? So the time of airway confirmation, it's just there sometimes and sometimes not.
Okay.
So it's definitely a documentation issue, right? So what I was kind of tight on this one is, you know, still finding the call to be non-compliant, right? Based on documentation. It's just, again, right, just something that I was observing. When I build, for example, this same measure on FirstPass using the data for another different agency, they are good, right? They are, they document time of error confirmation and as well as method. So yeah, so I think it's one of the idiosyncrasies of this particular agency and how they document. To me, I just found it hard to say like, oh, non-compliant, right? When I'm seeing the end title there. So anyway, that was just a little comment that I had for you guys, and just to see if you guys were observing the same thing or not. Alrighty, so this is the last airway measured as built in trigger format, right? So if you are okay with it and you don't have any additional questions or anything else you want for me to show, I'll move on to FirstPass.
Go for it.
Awesome. Alrighty, so I have FirstPass. So FirstPass, again, it's our quality assurance, quality improvement tool. It's based right now here using EPCR data. What it does is it selects a set of calls that are important to you. So in this particular case, we have ACS, 2 NEMSCO because I split them down, refusal, a stroke, a trauma, and a universal category or groups of calls. And each one of these, we call them protocols. Each one of these protocols has built a specific set of questions, right? Patient care documentation based that are appropriate for those types of calls, right? And then the system at the endpoint is designated to say, yes, you know, all of the questions, metrics, tests that you have requested for us to build under the refusal protocol have been met. So this call is a pass. There's nothing for you to do. Or, hey, at least one of the metrics, task questions that you have asked for us to build that are appropriate for, you know, any refusal call, at least one of them was found to be non-compliant. And we need a human to take a look at this call to tell us, is this appropriate, yes or no? Right. So that's, again, in a 2 second, 3 second, what a FirstPass does. So for the purposes of this demo, again, I have a NEMSQA protocol, and this has been the bane of my existence. Just kidding. I haven't, you know what? I haven't spent so much time working on a protocol, I think ever in my almost 7 years of working on FirstWatch than this NEMSQA protocol. So I was very, very ambitious here. So what we did is, I filtered every single call that was appropriate, right? So taking away, taking away the canceled calls and the non-patient and et cetera, right? So all patient contacts. For this agency, I filtered every single one of those calls, and using only FirstPass, I built denominator and numerator within each test, right? So that was a very interesting endeavor. So if I concentrate just on the NEMSQA, which I already have pulled in here 2 calls, I'm going to click on one, this first one. So when I click on a call, my screen kind of shifts into now everything related to the screen is attached or related to this particular incident, right? So the top section over here we use when we review or audit a call. The section that I'm going to concentrate right now is this middle section, which is called the sort of test outcome. So you see a couple of columns over here. You see that if I click over here, this particular call met criteria for different protocols or types of calls. So it met criteria for universal, it met criteria for the NEMSQA Airway, and it met criteria for the NEMSQA overall protocol. The system will line item all of the different metrics or tests that are related to the protocol, right? So you have the 3 NEMSQA Airway measures, and down below you have the NEMSQA measures that met criteria for this particular call. And then you have this column, which is passes or flags. So pass means everything was found to be compliant. You got a little green check mark. If it's not, you're going to get a little red. And then you have some columns over here to give you context on provider and system. And because this is a demo site that we have de-identified for the purposes, again, for demoing FirstPass, these numbers look exactly the same, right? Because we have removed the crew names. So again, in terms of FirstPass, NEMSQA measures function exactly like any other protocol. So you're able to, select an text exception if you would need to. The beauty of this is that, again, I have forced over here NEMSQA Airway measures, right? So you see the measures, but in the overall NEMSQA protocol, the system will only display the NEMSQA measure that is applicable to this call, right? So when you open different calls, you can have, safety measure 1 and 2 only, and other like this one, you can have different, 5, 6 different NEMSQA measures, right? So the system behind the scenes is taking a look and saying, okay, from all of the, NEMSQA measures, which one or which measure did this particular incident met the criteria for the denominator? If it meets the criteria for the denominator, you will see the measure. If it does not, then it will hide it, right? Because it's not applicable. So as you move through different calls, you will see different NEMSQL measures, right, as they apply to the incident, right? And that's the reason why I kind of force the system to separate NEMSQL and airway measures so you can see them, right? So again, it functions exactly the same. So this is a past NEMSQL measured, and if it gets a flag, it functions exactly the same, right? You get the passes and the flags, you're able to adjust, right? Accordingly, same as any other first pass protocol over here, right? So again, functions the same. The complexity arises on this ability to build numerator and denominator within the one test, right? And that's how I'd say it's the vein to my existence, right? Because we've never done this way before. So it's been an interesting process that's really taking the first pass tool a little bit to the limit. So we have learned a ton of things while building these measures. We have made engineering team has helped me to do some enhancements to us. And I've learned a lot. So go ahead, Mike, you want to jump?
I was just going to ask you to show the control charts that go
Yes.
along with it.
That is next, friend. Thank you.
Perfect.
So this is done and beautiful. I love it. I want to caress it. Like every time I open the first pass tool, it's like, look at you, you're so cute. Okay. So like any first pass, you have the ability to see control charts, right? So you have data over time. This gap is a data gap that we have for this particular agency. That's why the big drop, but other than that, everything is normal. So you get one big control chart per each protocol. So I have only asked the system just to show us NEMSQL and NEMSQL Airway. And then if you click the three little dots over here, same functionality, you can export and same thing. I have already loaded because I don't know why it doesn't like it when I'm sharing my screen. So I just preloaded when you do the three little dots, you view test results, but for some reason when I'm showing my screen, it doesn't like it. So I preloaded them already. So we have control charts. Again, I'm sitting on the NEMSQL Airway measure, right? So you're going to get a control chart for, Airway 18, for Airway 05, and for Airway 01, right? With the same functionality. Right now, these look exactly the same because nobody is reviewing calls, but obviously if somebody was reviewing calls, these control charts would look different. Okay. And then obviously if I had the NEMSQL, the entire NEMSQL, dashboard, I clicked on the three dots, you would see the same thing, right? So one control chart per each of your NEMSQL measure, right? Okay. Anything particular you want me to stop to show?
Just real quick for folks who have not seen these control charts, the scale is all set 0 to 100% for all of them, so that they all have a similar scale, and each dot represents the cumulative average of the calls that fit into that bucket that month, right? This basically gives you an ability to see your system's performance. Looks like we've got 24 dots. So we got 2 years worth of performance on this particular set of charts, and it allows you to pretty quickly at a glance see what of the NEMSQL measures needs your love and attention in your system, and if you are making interventions from a system level to make improvements, what quality improvement really should be. These charts will allow you to see whether or not your interventions are producing the results that you're hoping for.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Any questions, comments, quips, quotes about any of this stuff from anybody here? Thank you, Louis.
I just want to say this is awesome. This is exactly what we were looking for. And not only in the first pass side, but having it on the FirstWatch side, but having it in the first pass side and allowing us to look at the charts and then adjust them and have the adjusted values. And then once we make that change with the filters to kind of say if it was missing or whatever, and we can identify why it wasn't compliant, I think we can make some real improvements in our systems.
Absolutely. Yeah. So again, right, depending on what you want to use, you can even use both, right? So trigger format or first pass format, or both or one or the other, right? And that was kind of our goal Because obviously not all of our partnering agencies have FirstPass, right? So we wanted to make sure that we had both tools available, right? Depending on what it is that you want to do, what you have available. So again, it's been a heavy lift, but it's been really satisfying, right? So I'm really happy that you guys like it.
Absolutely. Any other questions, comments, quips, quotes, concerns, requests from anybody?
Oh, you told me to show QA macros. I'm sorry, I forgot. So as well as we do on triggers, FirstPass does have the ability to export to Excel, right? So you can export. Right now I'm sitting on the pass bucket, right? So if I export to Excel, oh, there we go. I was like, why is it? Again, it does the same thing as the trigger format. It will export anything. So these are all in the pass queue, right? It will export the calls, the incident, and some information from this particular call from FirstPass as well, right? And then again, if you want to, export the review, then you would just click on the queue, on the review queue, and then do the same process export.
Great. And once you've got it there, you can do your pivot tables or your QI macros or whatever you need to do your own stuff with.
Yeah. And then you do QA macros from here, from the options.
Is there anything else you were wanting to walk people through today, Sylvia?
That is actually it. I just saw you and then I remembered that we wanted to show Excel and QA macros from FirstPass as well. That's actually all that I have for you guys. So it was, triggers, the 3 triggers, the protocols, the dashboards, and the ability to export from the system. So that's all that I got for you guys.
That's all? I mean, that seems
I can do a dance.
that seems an impressive suite. I would not ever use that's just what I got. That is.
So Joe's got a question here. Joe, do you want to just unmute and ask your question?
You scared him.
And he's looking for the unmute button right now.
All right. Yeah,
There you
go. I mostly just play in FirstPass itself. So when I run reports, like for just other compliance things, how do I get the numerator and denominator for these when I'm just looking at the reports within FirstPass? I've never done that before.
Yeah.
We've just run just compliance percentages.
Percentages, yeah. Trying to look or think right now of a report that will give you, so the number of counts, right? So the number of calls or the number of counts, I can't remember the name that it says on the report. The number would be your denominator, right? And then again, if we're sticking to the NEMSO concept, so the number of calls for each metric will be different because of course we're running the denominator within the test. And then your compliance would be that just percentage, right? And then let me, I'll send them over. I'll send an image, a screenshot, and then I'll highlight where you can see the denominator, right? And it will just give you the counts of your denominator and then your numerator. I'll send a screenshot to you.
That sounds great.
Yeah, and then if you want to see, so I'm sorry, and then I'm assuming that you just want to see the counts, right, of what is your denominator and numerator. If you want to see like the logic behind the scenes, the numerator and the denominator, then I can do that as well, right? So that would be kind of extracting the logic behind the metric. And I don't, and maybe I'm understood. I don't know if you're looking for the number counts in the report or the actual logic of numerator and denominator, Joe.
No, just the actual numbers.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I'll send you a screenshot from your report. Which report are you using? For?
What do you mean?
Which do you remember what FirstPass report you are using? So I can use that same one. So there's 7. Okay, I'll reach out.
I don't know.
Okay, don't worry.
I can reach out to you guys.
Yeah, I'll send you an email, Joe.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Jennifer, I see you've got a question in there about non-FirstPass customers to purchase access only to Airway collaborative protocols. Can you just either direct message me or whatever your email and phone number, and what we can reach out to you to see what we can do to get you taken care of from that perspective. It's there are a number of different options. Figure out exactly what it is you need and what you've got, and see what we can do to make it work for you. So I just need to know how to get a hold of you, and then we can take care of that.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and put my email. Sylvia, if you're up for putting your contact information.
No, these people are going to reach out. No, it's scary. Doing it now.
Sylvia, so
Yeah.
when I go into FirstPass, and we've been seeing this for a little while, under protocols, as we see our calls, it shows up with something called NEMSQA measures.
Yeah.
But when we click on the calls, we don't see any of the actual measures. So
Yeah.
how do we get them to start showing up?
Okay, I'll double check, but remember that if we did it, and then I think you've been working with Armando, right?
Right.
We've been kind of, yeah, in conversations, all the clinical team together. So you will only, the protocol will only display calls when it meets the criteria for the denominator, right? So if you don't have any calls that met the denominator, the system will not show the test at all, right? Because it finds it to be non-compliant. But let me double check and make sure that everything is flowing appropriately, it's billed appropriately to make sure, right?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I'm writing it down because my brain is getting old and then I forget. Okay. And
What
then,
else? Any other questions from anybody?
oh, you put your text? Look at you. You have your phone number?
The world texts me. That's the preferred way of doing it. That's what
I'm
all the
horrible.
cool kids do.
I'm horrible with the phone.
Except for the FBI just said we're not supposed to text anymore if you're an Android user or whatever. Who knows? So.
Crazy. Like right now, I have no idea where my phone is. Like, I don't know. It's not in my head. I'm terrible with phone.
That's impressive, Sylvia.
Losing
Whereas
my
the
phone?
rest,
No.
yeah, right, not knowing where it is, whereas the rest of us get that panic, where is my phone?
It's a horrible habit. I tell you, it's horrible. I'm tied to my computer and I have my iWatch, so I know if,
Oh, there
somebody's
you
gonna call me, it's gonna show. But where is it? I don't know. See, this is me. Guys, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you guys joining in, coming in and listening to me talk and being patient with me while I joke around. Again, right. Thank you so much for your time. Pleasure to see you all. Thank you so much for your questions. And hopefully we can, roll out all of these NEMSQA measures to our FirstWatch and FirstPass partnering agencies. Right?
And if you're part of the FirstWatch family yet and you want to reach out to either one of us, we can chat with you about that too.
Absolutely.
Well, the thanks is all to you for your perseverance and commitment to the challenge of making this happen, especially with Airway 01. The tools and resources that you've made available are just awesome. And I wish I was at an agency that I could go in and play with this, because there's great reports and I'm excited for people to start using them and improving care. So thank you.
Yeah, us too. I owe our engineering team a couple of beers. Other than that, all good.
Perfect. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you for your time, everybody. Give us a scream if we can help with anything. Sheree, it's great to see you.
You too. Thanks.
Stephanie has ideas, so
Well,
make
that's
sure.
weird. Does she? That's important.